Chris Bowen, thanks for coming on.
Pleasure, Leigh. Good evening.
In the US, the new President Joe Biden's been honest with coal workers and said, we're not going to forget you, but, things are going to change. You can't transition to a low emissions economy and lie to people in the coal industry that there won't be job losses, can you?
Absolutely, Leigh. And my message to coal workers and to coal mining communities around Australia is that coal mining is good and noble work, and our economy has in many senses been built on it. It's been dangerous and dirty work for many years, but the world is changing and we do need to be honest about that. And regardless of what our domestic climate change policies are, while we will continue to export coal for many years, coal mining and coal mining communities will come under pressure. Now, the choice is, do you have a government which shrugs its shoulders and says, let the market rip? Or do you have a government which says, we will invest in communities, we will invest in individuals and help you through that change?
So let's say people in coal mines in the Hunter Valley do lose their jobs. What kind of new jobs would you see them transitioning into?
Well, I see many thousands of jobs being created by good climate change policy, both directly in terms of renewable energy and also in reinvigorating traditional manufacturing industries with energy certainty and energy policy certainty. Manufacturing and traditional industries have been under huge pressure, and I know this, Leigh. I represent the largest industrial estate in the Southern Hemisphere, in Smithfield Wetherill Park. I live on its edge. I see this every day. And good energy policy is good employment policy. We can create thousands of jobs right across the country by getting emissions down, having a pro-investment, pro-jobs climate change policy.
So manufacturing jobs, like what sort of manufacturing would you see happening somewhere like the Hunter?
Oh, well, when you get the policy settings right, then the private sector can invest in all sorts of opportunities in the Hunter, in Western Sydney, in Western Melbourne, right across the country. That's the problem that has beset energy policy in Australia under this government. We've had 22 different energy policies. Why would anybody invest in energy generation in Australia when you have no policy certainty and when you have chop and change policies under the Liberal and National Party government?
So I guess, if I was sitting in the Hunter watching this tonight, what I want to know is, just in concrete terms, like what sort of a job would I have? When you say manufacturing, do you mean I'd be working in a factory, on an assembly line? Like what sort of jobs do you mean?
Well, I mean jobs that will be created across the board, Leigh, with good energy policy. And it might be in renewable policy directly, and many of the jobs created in renewable policy actually are of a similar nature to more traditional energy jobs, or in manufacturing across the board. I see climate change policy and energy policy as a remarkable opportunity to invest in communities, to create good jobs, not just in regional areas, but including in regional areas, but across the suburbs and regions of Australia. Before
the last election, Labor pledged a 45% cut to emissions by 2030. That's not your policy now. The planet hasn't changed. The challenge hasn't changed. What has changed now that that target is seen as too ambitious?
Well, we haven't been in office, Leigh, so we haven't been able to implement policies to get to that target. Now, we've got a very clear commitment to net zero by 2050.
No, but I just want to know what's changed, because your target's not going to be the same that you took just a few years ago, and the challenge hasn't changed. I just want to know what's changed.
Well, obviously, Leigh, I'm going through the process of consulting with experts in my early days as Shadow Minister for Climate Change. But if you come to office in 2022, you can't have exactly the same policies as if you'd come to office in 2016 or 2019.
Presumably you'd have to have more ambitious policies, given that the problem's getting...
Presumably you've got to deal with the lost opportunities of 3 years of Liberal and National Party government. Now, we will have a very clear, scientific and evidence-based climate change policy, but one which is also focused on economic security and investment and a pro-jobs policy.
The UK is committed to a 68% reduction in emissions by 2030. The US is going to be announcing its 2030 target soon, and that's expected to be between 30 to 40%. Should Labor's target be somewhere in that kind of range? I mean, that is a pretty big kind of range, but 30 is considered to be the lowest possible level.
You just answered the question for me, Leigh. It is a big range.
But 30 is the lowest.
Yeah, well... we've got a clear commitment to net zero by 2050. Obviously, there's a roadmap to get there, which is important, which we'll be outlining very clearly. The government has said they'll release their 2035 target after the election, but we're going to take to the people a very clear policy based on science and evidence, which is not just about the medium-term target. I understand the focus on that, but there's sort of a shorthand in the conversation that is just about the target. It's about the levers, about the mechanisms, about the policies to get there as well. And that's what I've been working on over the course of this week, and I'll continue to work on and continue to consult with the experts on, and we'll have plenty of detailed announcements between now and the next election.
Labor's had trouble getting its own party united on a policy in this area. If you can't persuade your own party on one direction, how will you be able to persuade the electorate?
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that, Leigh, because everybody in the Labor Party accepts that climate change is real and we need a policy to deal with it. Unlike the Liberal Party...
Yeah, but there's a lot of wiggle room after that.
Well, yeah, but in the government of the day, Leigh, you've got climate change deniers in their ranks. The Minister for Climate Change himself said that climate change was not necessarily based on facts not that long ago. In the Labor Party, sure, we have a policy debate about mechanisms, etc., but we are all 100% committed to a climate change policy and which deals with humankind causing climate change.
Does Anthony Albanese get to take Labor to the next election as leader, no matter what?
Yes.
Chris Bowen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Leigh.
Hi, I'm Leigh Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 7:30's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.